Hey everybody, it's Alan here. And today I'm going to work on 3 different Premna, Shohin Premna. And I've worked on these same 3 trees in other videos all at the same time, so I'm going to keep that continuity. So probably throughout the life of these trees, I will be featuring all 3 of them in the same videos over and over and over again so you can see their separate development. And this is the first one. They're all Premna, and Premnas are fantastic bonsai. The thing I really like about Premna is they can get amazing leaf miniaturization compared to the mature adult leaf on just a tree growing wild. This tree here, and I'm going to start, obviously, if you've watched any of my videos, when I've allowed a tree to grow with a lot of long, leggy growth, the first procedure that I do is I cut all that stuff off. And I wanted to cut those 2 parts off because I wanted to show you the trunk chop. So this tree started as a cutting, and then when it rooted, it was put in a small container for a period of time. And then I put it in the ground, and I let it grow about 6 feet. And it was fairly long and leggy. It wasn't a big, thick, bushy shrub because it was in a group of about 6 Premna that were all on the ground. And they were in my front yard, so I was treating them kind of like a tall hedge. And when I decided to turn it into a bonsai, I cut to right here. So what's that? 3 inches maybe? So I cut off the entire rest of the 6-foot chunk. And then all of this new growth here has all emerged since then. It was just a stump. And in fact, if I remember correctly, this bud here emerged, which is now the main trunk. And this first main branch wasn't even there. And then it began to sprout. So here's a perfect example of a sprout that really doesn't make any sense at all. But you see it sprouted there. And I certainly don't need it because it's way, way, way low. But they will do that. So sometimes if you've got a tree that needs a new branch, sometimes you can just kind of wait for it to sprout. And that's what happened with this Premna. So this is the first main branch, so I'm going to cut it back considerably. And the back branch is sort of part of the first main branch. Oh no. I was going to say I'm going to sneeze, but I didn't even get it out before I did. Anyway. And then we have our second main branch, which is developing nicely. And I have a little tuft of foliage in the front, which I keep threatening to just cut away completely, but so far I've left it. And then you can see it comes up into here, and I'm going to shorten all this stuff. And I really want the apex to get a little bit higher. I want the apex to be up in here. So I'm not sure if I'm going to need to wire, just allow new growth to grow up into there. Because right now it's kind of like a flat top. And I don't really like flat trees like that. I want a crown. So I want the apex to be up into here. And the part that I want to accentuate as the apex is this guy right here. So I may just wire that guy just a tiny, tiny little bit. When you've got a little tiny branch that you're going to wire, it can be tricky because it's also fairly stiff. So I'm probably going to be using a gigantic amount of overkill for how much wire I actually need. But that's okay. So bring it up to here, trying not to crush anything. Sometimes you just sort of feel your way around. Okay, now I want to wrap that apex and then bring it up. Like that. And it still needs to fill in, but it's on its way. This tree has developed very nicely, and you can see just how tiny the leaves are. I mean, here's my thumb. I mean, the leaves are just so tiny. Oops. Stay on the tripod. That's not a tripod anyway. Stay on the turntable. So there we go. And there may be some other things I want to do with this guy. I may wire these branches down more to give it more of an impression of age. There's space in here, but we have this little branch here that can fill that in. And then now that I've wired the apex up, promote that growth into here, and we're going to end up with a tree that has a very nice canopy about like that, with the tree about in there. So I'm really enjoying developing this guy. And so we'll go to the next. This next tree is similar to the first one, really. Zoom in a little bit. But this tree was also rooted as a cutting. In fact, virtually every Shohin, at least, and even some larger trees, larger Premna that I have, they were all started as cuttings, either cuttings or air layers, because my Premna will flower like crazy, especially like this time of year in the summer. And they will even have little pollinator insects, but I've never once seen it set seed. And that's probably just a quirk of the climate I'm in. My guess is that it's probably a little too humid. That happens where trees just don't set seed. And that's not that big of a deal because they root from cuttings so easily that it's really not necessary to get seed. And this guy was not repotted this spring. And so you can see it's got some leggy growth, but nothing like the last one, which was repotted this spring. So had I repotted this guy, it would have given it more room to grow, the roots to grow, which would translate into more foliage. But this is also a cute little guy. If we bring it up like this, you can see the structure. It's very nice. And the branching is pretty nice. I have a little bit of a paradox here because I have a branch in the back and then this smaller branch here. And probably this smaller branch needs to be the first main branch and get rid of this one entirely. But for now, I've kept it. And this is another one where I really need to build the apex a little more. And that's how I grow my trees. I work on the lower portions of the tree first, and then build my apex as the last thing to do. So I may want this guy to also come up just a tiny bit. And this thing has been almost all entirely clip and grow. But regardless of what I'm going to do, it needs to be cut to about right there. And this tree also has beautiful leaf miniaturization compared to a large tree. And I'll go get a mature tree for the last one. The third tree that I'm going to work on in this video, I will go get a mature leaf from some of the other ones I have in the ground that are just growing rampantly to get them thick. So this is a cool little tree. I'm thinking perhaps of putting it into a little bit different pot. This is a nice pot, but it's a little deep for how thick the trunk is. The best proportions for a bonsai is that the pot should be as deep as the tree is wide. So it needs a much shallower pot, or even something at least close. Doesn't have to be exact. And of course, as the tree grows, even slightly, the trunk will continue to thicken, so that over time, over the years, this trunk will get thicker and thicker, regardless of how slow that is. So if I do choose a pot for this, and that won't be until the spring, that won't be until next spring, when they're breaking dormancy and I can really do a heavy root prune on this guy. And Premna are tough plants. They can take a root prune, a very deep root prune, and continue to thrive if it's the correct time of year. And now is not really that time. So this is another very cute little tree that I'm really enjoying working on. So that's number 2. This third tree was rooted as a cutting, and then it was planted in a very shallow food tray, something like this. So this is the top, I think, of a strawberry container. So this tree was growing in a food tray similar to this. It was a little bit more square, the tray that this guy was in. But that helps to get a really shallow root system if you use those really shallow food trays. And like I said, that was the top of a strawberry container. So here's what is it? This one had grapes in it. So can we just show it in the back? Okay, so here, this has grapes. You can see the top is only about 1 inch deep, but the base is about 4 inches deep. Can you see that? I hope you can see that. Should we take the tree down? So this stuff works for me, these old containers. This is, if you look at the recycle triangle, it's a 1, which is PETE, which is polyethylene tetraethylene. And this stuff has really great UV tolerance. So they can stay pretty much intact for a number of years. They last far longer than the ice cream containers that I used. So anyway, because it had such a shallow root system already, based on the fact that it was living in that shallow food container, I decided to put it into this very, very shallow pot. This is a very cool pot. It's a free form, and some of the soil has washed away, so I probably need to add some soil. So you can see the roots right here. You know, I had to cut around, so you can see brand new roots coming right there. And there's another root coming off of this one that I cut. Those are really not in perfect position, but for now, I'm just going to leave it. This one got repotted and root pruned this spring also. And I was also going to show you the mature leaf. And this is the mature leaf of a Premna, which is almost as big as the whole tree. So fantastic leaf reduction. And I just love that about these guys. This tree has basically been all clip and grow. So all this twisty-turny has all been clip and grow. So it's the same procedure as the other two. This one does not have a tremendous amount of really long rangy growth. But the growth that has elongated more than I actually want is going to come off. And you know, I call this a finished tree. It may not be show quality, but it's in a bonsai pot. It's got the structure that I like. It's got the branching. That's pretty much where I want it. And I think this one here too needs a little bit more on the apex up into here. So I will leave videos of these very same trees as they've developed. Like I said, I've done videos featuring these exact trees. I know at least once, perhaps even twice. So you can see how they've developed over time. So I do think I want another little, so we have it sweeping up into here, sweeping up into here, sweeping up into here, and then have the apex up into here. And so when you have a finished tree, it's just a constant and continuous, allowing it to grow and then cutting it back. And I was thinking about, how do I explain that? You know. And I thought, a haircut. A human haircut. Anthropomorphism is a fantastic thing where you give inanimate objects, well, not inanimate, but obviously this is alive, but non-human objects, human characteristics. So this is, right, we get a haircut, right? And it's all nice and neat and it looks beautiful, and then it grows out and it gets kind of shaggy, and you go back and you get another haircut and then it looks real nice, and then it gets a little shaggy, and you do that for the whole rest of your life. And it's the same with these trees. They need to grow some. You cannot keep a tree constantly in perfect show quality, not to say that this is a show quality tree, but they have to grow some, and then you cut that back. So it's just like giving it a haircut. And then when you cut it back, it's much neater, much cleaner, much tighter, and then the new growth emerges the way we had it here, with the excess growth. And then you cut it back again, you give it another haircut, and it looks, and it develops, and it's developing over and over and over. As you let it grow and cut it back, the development just gets better and better and better. So, and that's going to happen for the rest of the life of this tree. when trees are shown in a show, they've been trimmed and they've been wired and the soil has been, more soil has been added, and if this pot doesn't really need to be cleaned because it's a kind of a weird textured pot, but the pots are shined and the tree is put into its finest look. But if you go to most bonsai artists, not all their trees are going to look like that all the time. There's a certain amount of growth that trees need in order to maintain a certain amount of health. So this is another guy that I really like. I want the apex to get up into here. We really have the branching that we need. And leaf miniaturization is absolutely fantastic. So Premna, if you can keep Premna from freezing, because they do not like cold. They sulk in cold weather and they die in freezing weather. I had a beautiful tree that was in the ground and I thought it was fairly protected, but man, it died back to almost nothing. And I was so bummed because it was huge. It's about 2.5 inches across, maybe 3 inches across. Died back to just a stump. It's still alive, but so I learned my lesson there. So that's it for this video. 3 Premna, all pretty nice little trees, all very similar but unique in their own way, and I keep saying that over and over. Similar but unique, and it's true though. So if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. At the end of this video, I will put some end screens where you can watch these same 3 trees as I went through previous haircuts, in quotes, previous styling. And recently, Lee's Trees put out a video where he was getting this weird brown stuff, like right there. And there's some of it beginning right here on his trees, and he wasn't quite sure what it is. And this is the beginnings of moss. That will turn green. And in fact, so will it in here. So I've shared in other videos where I really don't promote moss, quote unquote. It just shows up. And that is what's called the gametophyte generation. Moss is a primitive plant where the sporophyte generation is the dominant, and the gametophyte generation is just this little slimy stuff. Whereas all angiosperm plants, this is the gametophyte generation, and the sporophyte generation is just the pollen and the anthers and the stamens and the seed. So, but that's what that kind of slimy stuff is moss that will, in a very short period of time, turn bright green. And if I'm not mistaken, you can rewind, and the other 2, well, maybe it was the middle one, the little guy that I did not repot. It had a bunch of moss, and all that moss just showed up just all by itself. So thanks again for watching. Please hit the like button if you'd like this video. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. And I keep threatening to put the little thing, where it says like, subscribe, notification, and there's a little, little rectangle, but who knows when that will ever happen. So please like, subscribe, leave a comment. All that stuff helps the algorithm send me to more and more people. And that's it for this video. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.